Ladies and gentlemen, a pleasant morning to all of us. Now, we are going to discuss the 6 education-related concepts based on the changing education paradigm. And now, let's start with our first concept, which is the 2 reasons of reforming public education. So, in light of the challenges faced by today's educators and students, the field of education is undergoing a paradigm shift with a focus on improving the educational system as a whole from an economic and cultural perspective. So these 2 factors can be thought of as the foundation upon which the dynamic improvement of the educational system can be built. So the first one is economic. Educate our children to take their place in the economies of the 21st century and what the economy will look like at the end of next week. So economic, so despite the fact that we have no idea what jobs will be like in the future, so many nations are struggling to figure out how to best prepare their children for the workforce. So the second one is cultural. Cultural identity and globalization. So cultural, in the face of globalization, nations are grappling with how best to transmit their cultural traditions to future generations. So these 2 factors can serve as a solid basis for achieving the objectives we have set for the development of education by giving each student the ability to adapt individually to shift in the surrounding environment and improving overall life satisfaction.
So, intellectual model of the mind. It is the Enlightenment view of intelligence, but the real intelligence consists or composed of certain type of deductive reasoning and knowledge of classics. So, deductive reasoning or deductive logic is used to determine whether premises add up to a sensible conclusion. Example is my birthday is October 21 and today is October 21. Therefore, today is my birthday. So, academic ability. It means the intellectual standing of a student. And there are 2 types of academic ability. Smart people or academic people and non-smart people or non-academic people. And the consequences is that smart people think they are not smart because they are easily being judged by others. And next one is twin pillars. So there are 2 types of twin pillars. The first one is economic, or a basic principle that describes how economy works, and intellectual, a group or presumption, ideas, standards, and behavior that together form a community accepted viewpoint.
The factory model of schools are designed to create docile subjects and factory workers. It means that the factory model of education is originally built to train future factory workers during the Industrial Revolution. During this period, learners should only be taught the essential skills required to become a successful factory worker. Instead of dividing the class into ability-based groups, students were grouped according to their chronological ages. In fact, it only limits the potential of many students according to their intrinsic interest. So during the first emergence of industrial paradigm of education, learners at the time were trusted to fully adopt the competencies promulgated by the industry of the country. According to Kane Robinson in his TED Talk, the industrial paradigm system is run for the benefit of industry, and in many senses along industrial lines, mirroring a factory system of production is at least in the following ways: ringing bells, separate facilities, specialized subjects, which means no integration of different subjects. And nowadays, we still educate children by batches, and that's how the factory model of education looks like, trusting and rejecting learners' interest and condition. Now, how about the 5 pillars of education for sustainable development in contrast with industrial paradigm of education? Well, industrial paradigm of education is not really fit for the future. We need a paradigm shift to fully acquire the 5 pillars of education for sustainable development rather than mere reform.
Factory models of education kills creativity. Sir Ken Robinson examines how education institutions and social expectations limit human originality. He says that because of our culture stigmatizes mistakes, we are less inclined and able to create original materials out of fear of failure and rejections. He argues that school destroys creativity, claiming that we don't develop into creativity, instead we grow out of it. School must provide comprehensive measures and diverse curriculum that incorporates the so-called creative disciplines and visual of performing arts. They must recognize the importance of discipline and education and use them as starting point of curriculum development. That if they are serious about cultivating real creativity across the curriculum, they need to remember that creativity describes a whole collection of similar but different processes. Linkage to the 5 pillars of education, indirect answer: school does not kill creativity.
Does industrial paradigm encourages divergent thinking? No, it does not, because industrial paradigm is about patterned approach in getting information in a specific way, while divergent thinking encourages the seeking of information in various ways, such as when someone is gathering data about something, he or she can use any method that suits their interests without having to face the difficulties a patterned approach gives. Sir Ken Robinson argues that our current educational systems are still based on an industrial paradigm of education. Education is increasingly standardized and about conformity, and kids who are living in the most stimulating age in history fail to see the point of going to school, which is about finding the right answers to pass the tests rather than about stimulating divergent thinking.
Shifting the education paradigm, we need to do the following shift to industrial capitalist education paradigm. Firstly, destroy the myth that there is a divide between academic and non-academic subjects, and between the abstract and the theoretical. Secondly, recognize that the most great learning takes place in groups. Collaboration is the stuff of growth rather than individualizing people, which separates them from their natural learning environment. Finally, we need to change the habitual ways of thinking of those within the educational system and the habitats which they occupy. So, a paradigm shift is a radical change in the core concepts and practices of a given domain, discipline, or field. The field of education at both the basic and higher education levels has undergone tremendous change since the World War II. The concept of paradigm shift comes mainly from the work of Thomas Kuhn in the context of revolutions in natural science. This concept is now used more broadly to describe fundamental changes that occur in any domain, discipline, or field. When a paradigm shift occurs, the worldview that previously dominated the domain is altered or even replaced with a new worldview. A paradigm shift causes the entire domain to think and act in new ways. These changes are challenging higher education leaders, faculty, and researchers to fundamentally rethink the nature and purpose of higher education and thus how it should be provided. As a result, some educators now believe that higher education needs to be reconceptualized from a humanistic and human rights perspective. So, this ends our report. Thank you.